Arlington National Cemetery, October 1993. The October wind carried the scent of cut grass and distant rain across Section 60. Six-year-old Kira Blackwood stood perfectly still between the rows of white headstones, her small hand gripping her mother's coat. The flag-draped coffin before her seemed impossibly large. 21 rifles cracked the morning silence. 7 men in dress uniforms fired 3 times each into the gray Virginia sky. She didn't cry. Her father had told her, Rangers don't cry at funerals. They stand tall. They remember. Colonel Wade Blackwood had fallen in Mogadishu 3 weeks earlier. The news said 18 Americans died that day. Kira's father was one of them. The details were classified. The pain was not. When the ceremony ended and the crowds dispersed, an older man in navy dress blues approached. His chest carried more ribbons than Kira could count. His face was weathered like old leather eyes, sharp and assessing. He knelt on one knee before her, bringing himself to her eye level. "You're Kira," he said. Not a question, a statement of fact. She nodded, unable to speak. The man reached into his uniform pocket and produced a small rectangular patch. Black background, yellow lettering. A Ranger tab. Her father's Ranger tab from his deployment gear. "Your father was the toughest man I ever trained," the man said. His voice was gravel and conviction. "Master Chief Dalton Vaughn, your dad and I went through advanced infantry together back in '86. I'm Navy, he was Army, but we respected each other. You understand respect?" Kira nodded again. "Good." Vaughn pressed the tab into her small palm, closing her fingers around it. "Strength isn't just muscle, kid. It's control. Your father controlled his fear every single day so others could come home. That's real strength. You remember that?" He stood, saluted the coffin one final time, and walked away through the headstones. Kira opened her hand. The Ranger tab lay there, still warm from his grip. She would carry it for the next 32 years. Naval Base Coronado, present day. The gym smelled like rubber mats and old sweat. Kira Blackwood moved through her kata in the pre-dawn darkness, each strike precise, each breath controlled. 5:30 in the morning. The rest of Coronado still slept. She preferred it this way. Alone, long, focused. No audience, no pressure, just movement and memory. She finished the sequence and stood still, centering her breathing. The Ranger tab hung on a thin chain around her neck, resting against her sternum beneath her PT shirt. She touched it briefly. A morning ritual, a reminder of why she was here. 29 years old, Lieutenant United States Navy, Chief Close Quarters Combat Instructor candidate, highest test score in Pacific Fleet history. And today 300 Navy SEALs would watch her prove it wasn't a fluke, or watch her fail. She showered, dressed in her service khakis, and walked across the base as sunrise painted Coronado pink and gold. The auditorium loomed ahead, a massive concrete structure that had hosted countless demonstrations, countless legends. Today it would host her. The side entrance was unlocked. She slipped inside. The space was cavernous. Tiered seating rose on 3 sides around a central mat area. The mat itself was navy blue, 40 feet square, surrounded by safety padding. Overhead lights cast everything in harsh clarity. No shadows to hide in. No mercy from exposure. Kira walked to the center of the mat and stood there looking up at the empty seats. In 3 hours, those seats would be filled. 300 elite warriors, 300 skeptics, 300 men who had earned their tridents through Hell Week and years of combat. Men who had seen things done, things survive, things that most people couldn't imagine. And they would watch a woman half their size tell them about hand-to-hand combat. She closed her eyes, breathed, found her center. The door banged open. Heavy boots on concrete. Voices loud and confident. The SEALs were arriving early. Kira opened her eyes and walked off the mat. She took a seat in the far corner of the lower tier and waited. She was good at waiting. Rangers taught that. Master Chief Vaughn reinforced it. Patience is a weapon. Use it. The auditorium filled like a stadium before a championship game. SEALs filtered in, wearing everything from dress uniforms to desert camis to casual civilian clothes. They carried coffee, protein shakes, dip cans. They joked, laughed, threw insults like men who trusted each other with their lives. The noise built like a physical force. By 0750 hours, every seat was taken. 300 men. The testosterone level in the room could probably register on seismographs. At 0800 exactly, Commander Hayes entered through the main doors. Senior Instructor Naval Special Warfare Combat Training, 28 years in the teams, 4 deployments, 2 Purple Hearts, a man who had literally written doctrine manuals. He walked to the center of the mat and waited. The noise died like someone had cut a wire. "Gentlemen," Hayes said, his voice carried without effort. "Welcome to this year's close quarters combat demonstration. As always, this is an opportunity to evaluate current technique, learn new approaches, and maintain the edge that keeps you alive downrange." Murmurs of agreement, some head nods. "This year," Hayes continued, "we're doing something different. Your instructor for today's demonstration is not someone you know, not someone most of you have even heard of. But I assure you what you're about to see will challenge every assumption you've ever made about CQC." The murmurs grew louder, confused, curious. Hayes turned toward the side entrance. "Lieutenant Blackwood, please join us." Kira stood. Every eye in the auditorium tracked her movement as she walked down the steps and across the mat. She wore standard khakis, no ribbons displayed, no name tape visible from distance, just another sailor. Small frame, 5'4", maybe 120, soaking wet. Blonde hair pulled back in a regulation bun. She walked with purpose but no swagger. Economy of movement. Nothing wasted. The noise started immediately. "You've got to be kidding me. Is that his assistant? They're sending admin now." Laughter rippled through sections of the crowd. Not malicious, just disbelief. Just men who had spent their entire adult lives in a world where physical dominance mattered and size was survival. Kira reached the center of the mat and stood beside Commander Hayes. She kept her expression neutral. Eyes forward, breathing steady. The laughter continued. Someone wolf whistled. Someone else told him to shut up. The wolf whistler didn't. In the 4th row center section, a massive figure stood up. Chief Petty Officer Garrett Brennan. Call sign Sledge. 6'5", 255 pounds of muscle and scar tissue. Red hair cropped close to his skull. Nose broken at least twice. Knuckles like walnuts. He wore desert camis and a shit-eating grin. Commander Sledge called out, voice booming across the auditorium. "Sir, is that the instructor, or did someone's daughter get lost on base?" The place erupted. Laughter, hoots, applause. 300 men enjoying a joke at someone else's expense. Sledge grinned wider, playing to his audience. Kira didn't react, didn't flinch, didn't look at Sledge. She simply removed her cover and set it carefully on a chair at the edge of the mat. Then she unclipped the chain from around her neck, the Ranger tab swinging briefly in the overhead lights, and placed it on top of her cover. Only then did she turn and look directly at Sledge. Her eyes were blue ice, calm water over deep currents. The laughter faltered, not stopped, just uncertain. Commander Hayes raised one hand. Silence fell like a blade. "Gentlemen," Hayes said, "allow me to properly introduce Lieutenant Kira Blackwood." A figure emerged from the shadows at the back of the auditorium. Older man, late 60s, moving with the careful precision of someone whose joints had earned every year. He wore khakis with anchors on the collar. Master Chief Petty Officer. He didn't sit, just stood there, their arms crossed, watching. Hayes continued. "Lieutenant Blackwood holds the highest close quarters combat score in Pacific Fleet history, 97.8 out of 100 possible points." The murmurs started again. Different tone now, skeptical but interested. The previous record was 94.2, set in 1992 by Captain Wade Blackwood, U.S. Army Rangers. Hayes paused. Let that sink in. Lieutenant Blackwood beat her father's record by 3.6 points. The murmurs died. Every SEAL in that room understood what it meant to beat a legacy, to carry a name and exceed it. She was trained in CQC by Master Chief Dalton Vaughn. Hayes gestured to the figure in the back. Gulf War SEAL. Panama Operations. Fort Amador. Master Chief Vaughn is here today as an observer. 300 heads turned. Master Chief Vaughn didn't wave, didn't acknowledge the attention, just stood there like a granite monument to everything the Navy represented. The door at the rear of the auditorium opened again. Rear Admiral Clayton Merrick entered, accompanied by 2 aides. Everyone stood. "Admiral on deck." Merrick waved them down. "As you were," Merrick said. He walked down the center aisle, every step measured, every movement radiating authority. 61 years old, former submarine officer. Cold War veteran, a man who had spent months under Arctic ice making decisions that could start or prevent World War III. He reached the mat and turned to face the assembled SEALs. "Gentlemen," Admiral Merrick said. His voice was quieter than Hayes's, but it carried further. "I know what you're thinking. I thought it too when I saw Lieutenant Blackwood's scores. So I watched her qualify. Personally, I stood in this very auditorium and watched her run through every scenario we could design. She didn't just pass, she excelled." He paused, scanned the crowd. "Your job today is not to judge whether she belongs here. Your job is to learn from someone who has mastered something you think you already know. Pride is useful in combat. Arrogance will get you killed. Remember the difference." Admiral Merrick nodded to Commander Hayes and took a seat in the front row. Hayes turned to the assembled crowd. "We'll begin with basic demonstration. I need a volunteer." No one moved. 300 SEALs suddenly very interested in their boots, their coffee, their fingernails. The silence stretched, became uncomfortable. Then Sledge stood again. Of course he did. "Sir," Sledge said, "I'll volunteer." Hayes looked at him, then at Admiral Merrick. The Admiral nodded once. "Very well, Chief Brennan. Please join Lieutenant Blackwood on the mat." Sledge walked down with the confidence of a man who had never lost a bar fight. He rolled his shoulders, cracked his neck, performed the little rituals of someone preparing for physical dominance. When he reached the mat, he was grinning again. Not cruel, just certain. He stood next to Kira. The size difference was absurd. He outweighed her by more than 130 pounds. His forearms were thicker than her thighs. Standing beside him, she looked like a child next to a professional linebacker. Sledge looked down at her. "No hard feelings, ma'am. I just think the boys need to see what real combat looks like." Kira looked up at him. "Chief Brennan, I'm going to ask you to do something that might be difficult for you." "What's that, ma'am?" "Attack me like I'm the enemy. Full speed, full power. Anything less is disrespectful to both of us." Sledge's grin faded slightly. He searched her face for a joke. Found none. "Ma'am, I don't want to hurt you." "You won't." Something in her voice made him hesitate. A certainty that didn't match her size. A calm that didn't match the situation. Commander Hayes stepped between them. "Rules of engagement. Chief Brennan will attempt to strike Lieutenant Blackwood. She will demonstrate defensive technique. Medical is standing by. Begin when ready." Hayes stepped off the mat. Sledge and Kira circled each other. 300 SEALs leaned forward. The silence was complete. Even breathing seemed loud. Sledge moved first, a feint to her left, testing her reaction. She didn't bite, didn't flinch. Just watched his center, mass his hips, the tells that preceded real commitment. He tried again, another feint faster this time. Still no reaction from her, just that unnerving calm. "Come on, ma'am," Sledge said. "Let's give them a show." Kira didn't respond, didn't take her eyes off him. Sledge planted his feet. His expression shifted. The grin disappeared. This was taking too long. He was starting to look foolish. Time to end it. He lunged, a right cross, fast and brutal. 255 pounds behind it, moving with the speed of someone who had spent 15 years turning violence into art. A punch that would have dropped most men instantly. A punch designed to intimidate, to dominate, to prove a point about natural hierarchy and physical reality. Kira saw it before it fully formed. Saw the micro shift in his shoulder, the telegraphed commitment of weight to his right side. She had maybe half a second to respond. Her left forearm came up. Not a block. A deflection. She made contact with the outside of his forearm, redirecting the trajectory of his fist past her head by inches. The punch cleaved air where her temple had been a microsecond before. Her right hand moved simultaneously. A strike would have been useless against his mass. Instead, she captured his extended wrist, thumb pressing into the ulnar nerve cluster just above his wrist bone, fingers wrapping the back of his hand, a grip like steel cable. Sledge felt it immediately. The pressure point, the control. He tried to pull back, but she moved with him, maintaining perfect contact, turning her entire body as if they were dance partners executing a rehearsed routine. Her hip rotated, the kinetic chain running from her planted foot through her leg, through her core, through her shoulder, transferred every ounce of her body weight and momentum into a single point of leverage. Not strength against strength, mechanics against mass. The standing armbar locked into place. His elbow hyperextended. The joint approached its breaking point, then exceeded it. The crack echoed across the auditorium like a gunshot. Sledge's face contorted. Animal pain, the kind that bypasses thought and hits directly into the brainstem. His legs buckled. He dropped to one knee, then both knees. His arm bent at an angle. Arms don't bend. Unnatural. Wrong. Kira maintained control. Precise pressure. Calculated force. She didn't wrench or twist. The technique had already done its work. Now she simply held him there, immobilized while she spoke. Chief, do not move. Your ulna is fractured. Medic. Her voice was perfectly steady. Clinical. No satisfaction. No anger. Just professional assessment of injury inflicted with professional precision. The auditorium was silent. Absolutely silent. 300 elite warriors men who had seen combat, inflicted trauma, survived violence in its rawest forms, sat frozen in their seats, stunned, disbelieving, watching something that shouldn't be possible. Sledge, the man who once bench pressed 405 pounds on a bet, who had carried wounded teammates through firefights, who was a walking, talking embodiment of physical dominance, was pinned to the mat by someone half his size. Two medics sprinted onto the mat with a kit and a stretcher. Kira released her grip only when they had hands on Sledge, only when his arm was being stabilized. She stepped back immediately, giving them room to work. Her breathing was elevated but controlled. Not a drop of sweat on her brow. Her expression neutral, professional. As the medics worked to immobilize Sledge's arm, he looked up at her. His face was pale pain still radiating through him, but his eyes were clear, focused. A question burned there. How, he whispered, the word barely audible. Kira crouched beside him, speaking low enough that only Sledge and the nearest medics could hear. You attacked with anger, Chief. Anger makes you predictable. I responded with training. Training makes you adaptable. She paused. Your technique was sound, your commitment was total, but you telegraphed your intention 3 moves before you threw that punch. I saw it coming because I was looking for it. You saw me as a target. I saw you as a problem to solve. Sledge stared at her. Something shifted in his expression. Not acceptance. Not yet. But the first crack in certainty's armor. The medics lifted him onto the stretcher. His arm was secured, stabilized, packed with ice. They began wheeling him toward the exit. As they passed, Commander Hayes' Sledge spoke again, loud enough for everyone to hear this time. She's legit, he said. That's no fluke. Then they were gone. The doors closed. The auditorium remained silent. Kira stood and walked to the center of the mat. She faced the assembled crowd. 300 faces staring back at her. Some shocked, some impressed, some still skeptical. Some calculating, already wondering how she'd done it already, thinking about counters and adjustments. Admiral Merrick stood. The room stood with him out of reflex. He walked onto the mat. Lieutenant Blackwood's demonstration illustrates several principles we'll be covering today, the Admiral said. First, size is an advantage, not a guarantee. Second, technique properly applied multiplies force beyond natural strength. Third, the calm fighter has more options than the angry fighter. He turned to face her. Lieutenant, that was a controlled break. Yes, sir. Standing armbar with measured pressure. Clean fracture of the ulna, approximately 3 inches proximal to the wrist. 6 to 8 weeks recovery with proper immobilization. Full function restoration expected. Her answer was textbook. Medical precision delivered without emotion. Admiral Merrick nodded. Gentlemen, Lieutenant Blackwood didn't just break Chief Brennan's arm. She broke it exactly as much as necessary to demonstrate control while minimizing long-term damage. That's the definition of professional application of force. He paused. Let that sink in. Now here's what happens next. Some of you are thinking this was luck. Others are thinking Sledge wasn't really trying. A few of you are already planning how you'd do it differently. The Admiral smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. So let's remove all doubt. He turned to Commander Hayes. Commander, Lieutenant Blackwood is authorized to demonstrate against multiple opponents. Graduated difficulty, your discretion on selection. Hayes's eyebrows rose fractionally. Sir, that wasn't in the protocol. I'm revising the protocol now. This auditorium came here expecting a demonstration. They're going to get one they'll remember. Admiral Merrick looked at Kira. Lieutenant, you have any objection to multiple demonstrations? Every eye in the auditorium fixed on her. The moment crystallized. Moment. She could decline. Medical would support it. She'd already proven her point. No one would fault her for stopping here. Except she would. No objection, sir. Outstanding. Commander Hayes, select your volunteers. Lieutenant, you will have 10 minutes to recover between demonstrations. Begin when ready. Admiral Merrick returned to his seat. The auditorium buzzed with new energy, anticipation, speculation. The impossible had just happened. Now they wanted to see if it could happen again. Commander Hayes turned to the crowd. I need 5 volunteers, graduated skill levels. Petty Officer Sullivan, you're first. A lean SEAL stood from the middle section. Devin Sullivan, call sign, quick draw, lightweight for a SEAL at 175 but fast. Boxing background, hands like lightning. He jogged down to the mat, bouncing on his toes, already loosening up. Kira watched him approach, assessed his movement. His confidence was different from Sledge's. Not arrogant, eager. He thought this was a challenge he could meet. Maybe he was right. Ma'am, Sullivan said when he reached her. Respectful, curious. That was impressive with Chia Brennan, but he's a power fighter. I'm speed. Different game. Then show me your game, Petty Officer. Sullivan grinned. Yes, ma'am. In the back of the auditorium, Master Chief Dalton Vaughn uncrossed his arms and leaned forward slightly. His weathered face showed no expression, but he was watching, evaluating. The way he'd watched Kira for 23 years, since that day at Arlington, when he'd pressed a Ranger tab into a grieving child's hand and promised her that control was strength. She had learned that lesson well. Now she would teach it to 300 of the Navy's finest warriors, whether they wanted to learn or not. Commander Hayes raised his hand. Demonstration 2. Begin when ready. Kira and Sullivan circled each other on the mat. 300 Navy SEALs watched in absolute silence, waiting to see if what they'd witnessed with Sledge was real, or if she'd simply gotten lucky against a man who'd underestimated her. The morning sun climbed higher outside. The temperature in the auditorium rose with the tension. And Lieutenant Kira Blackwood, daughter of a Ranger who died in Mogadishu, student of a Gulf War SEAL legend, prepared to prove that the first demonstration was no accident. Devin Sullivan moved like water. No wasted motion, no telegraphed strikes. His boxing background showed in every step, every shift of weight. He kept his hands high elbows, tight chin tucked. Professional stance. Real training. This wasn't going to be like Sledge. Kira watched his feet, watched the micro adjustments in his balance. Speed fighters always thought their advantage was reaction time. They were wrong. Their advantage was making opponents react to them instead of thinking. The counter was simple. Don't react. Anticipate. Sullivan feinted left. A jab flickered toward her face. Fast. Most people would have flinched. Kira shifted her head 2 inches. The punch cut air. She didn't counter. Just watched. Waited. Sullivan reset, bounced on his toes, tried again. Jab, jab, straight right. A classic combination. Clean technique. The first 2 jabs were setups for the third strike, the power shot designed to follow through while his opponent was still defending the first 2. Kira slipped the first jab, parried the second. As the straight right came in, she moved inside his guard. Sullivan's own momentum carried his fist past her shoulder. She was too close now. His reach advantage disappeared. In boxing, this was called smothering. In CQC, it was called taking the angle. Her right hand captured his extended wrist. Her left arm snaked around his elbow. She dropped her weight, twisted her hips, and Sullivan's world inverted. The arm bar locked in before he fully understood what had happened. His shoulder screamed. His elbow hyperextended. He was moving too fast to stop, and Kira used that speed against him. He tapped. 3 fast taps on her arm. The universal signal. I submit. Kira released immediately. Sullivan rolled away, clutching his elbow. Not injured, just shocked. The whole exchange had taken maybe 4 seconds. Sullivan stood slowly, worked his arm through its range of motion, everything functional. He looked at Kira with new respect. You're fast, he said. You're faster, Kira replied, but speed without control is just flailing. She projected her voice so the auditorium could hear. A lesson, not just for Sullivan, for everyone watching. Sullivan nodded, extended his hand. Kira shook it. He walked off the mat, and the room erupted in conversation. Not laughter this time. Analysis. Assessment. The SEALs were starting to understand this wasn't a show. It was a masterclass. Commander Hayes checked his watch. Lieutenant, you have 10 minutes. I'm ready now, sir. Hayes looked at Admiral Merrick. The Admiral nodded. Very well. Petty Officer Caldwell, you're up. A mountain stood from the front row. Marcus Caldwell, call sign Grinder. 230 pounds of wrestler's muscle. Thick neck, thick chest, thick everywhere. His specialty was taking people to the ground and making them quit. He'd won the base grappling tournament 3 years running. Nobody had ever escaped his top control. Caldwell approached the mat with the confidence of someone who understood physics. Weight mattered. Leverage mattered. And he had both in abundance. Ma'am, Caldwell said, polite, professional. I'm not going to strike you. My game is groundwork. If I take you down, do you submit or do we keep rolling? We keep rolling until one of us taps or Commander Hayes calls it. Caldwell smiled, not cocky, just certain. Yes, ma'am. They squared up. Caldwell dropped his level immediately. Wrestlers always did. Lower center of gravity, harder to throw. He shot for a double leg takedown. Fast for a big man, his shoulder drove into her hips, arms wrapping her legs. Pure power, pure technique. Kira sprawled, drove her hips back, flattened her weight down on his shoulders. Every grappler knew the sprawl. It was basic defense. But basic done perfectly was still effective. Caldwell's takedown stalled. He adjusted, tried to run the pipe, tried to elevate. She base widened his, posted on his head, created enough space to disengage. They reset, circled. Caldwell shot again. Same setup, different angle. This time he got deeper, his arms locked around her waist. He lifted. Kira's feet left the mat. For a moment, she was airborne helpless. Caldwell drove forward and they both went down hard. The impact echoed through the auditorium. Kira's back hit the mat with Caldwell's full weight behind it. 230 pounds of wrestler landing in top position. Exactly where he wanted to be. The 300 SEALs leaned forward. This was it. This was where size mattered. Technique could only compensate so much. On the ground with a skilled grappler and top control weight was destiny. Caldwell immediately worked to establish side control. He drove his shoulder into her face, cross-face pressure, trying to flatten her out. His weight settled heavy across her chest. Basic but effective. Make breathing hard. Make movement harder. Break their will. Kira didn't panic. Panic was oxygen debt. She kept her elbows tight, her frame strong. When Caldwell tried to pass her guard to mount, she shrimped. Hip escape, creating just enough space to get her knee between their bodies. Half guard, not dominant, but not completely flattened either. Caldwell worked, drove his knee through, passed to mount, full weight now pinning her to the mat. He sat high on her chest, knees tight to her ribs. From here, most people tapped. The pressure was enormous. Breathing became work. Thinking became hard. Kira's face flushed red from the pressure. Caldwell postured up slightly, preparing to rain down strikes in a real scenario. That posture was her opening. She bridged hard, explosive hip thrust, and Caldwell's weight shifted forward. Not much, just enough. Her legs came up. Fast. Flexible. Her calf wrapped around his neck from behind. Her other leg locked over it, creating a triangle around his head and one of his arms. The blood flow to his brain cut off immediately. The triangle choke was technique, not strength. Properly applied size didn't matter. Caldwell recognized it instantly. Fought it. Tried to stack her drive, her shoulders to the mat, break the angle. But Kira had her grips. She pulled down on his head, squeezed her legs together, and Caldwell's face went from red to purple. During the scramble, Caldwell had thrown an elbow. Not malicious, just desperate technique. It caught Kira in the ribs. Hard. She felt something shift. Pain lanced through her left side. Probably cracked. Maybe broken. Her face tightened, but she didn't release the choke. Caldwell tapped. 3 fast taps on her thigh. Kira released immediately, and they both rolled apart. Caldwell gasped for air, one hand to his throat. His face slowly returned to normal color. He looked over at Kira and saw her holding her ribs. Concern flashed across his face. Ma'am, you okay? Kira stood slowly. The pain was significant, sharp, breathtaking. She kept her left arm pressed against her side. I'm fine, petty officer. Good work. It wasn't a lie, just incomplete truth. Caldwell stood, approached her carefully. That was a clean triangle. I thought I had you. You did have me, for about 10 seconds. But mass without technique is just weight to carry. Again, she projected the words. The lesson for everyone. Caldwell nodded understanding and walked off the mat, rubbing his throat. Commander Hayes stepped forward. Lieutenant Medical needs to check those ribs. I'm operational, sir. That wasn't a request. A corpsman jogged onto the mat with a kit. Kira lifted her shirt enough for him to palpate the ribs on her left side. His fingers probed gently. She flinched twice. The corpsman looked at Commander Hayes. Possible crack, definitely bruised. Recommend X-ray. After the demonstration, Kira said. The corpsman looked at Hayes. Hayes looked at Admiral Merrick. The Admiral stood and walked onto the mat. He studied Kira's face. The pain there, the determination. Lieutenant, you've proven your point. No one here doubts your capability now. With respect, sir, we're not done. You're injured. Combat doesn't stop for injuries, sir. Admiral Merrick was silent for a long moment. The auditorium held its collective breath. Finally, the Admiral nodded. Your call, Lieutenant. But if medical says stop, you stop. Clear. Clear, sir. The Admiral returned to his seat. The corpsman wrapped her ribs tight. Compression. It helped. Not enough, but it helped. Commander Hayes consulted his roster. Petty Officer Knox, you're up. Tyler Knox stood from the middle section. Call sign Hammer, 6'2", 210 pounds, Muay Thai specialist. 4 years training in Thailand between deployments. His kicks could break ribs. His knees could shatter jaws. He was everything Caldwell wasn't. Aggressive, violent, pressure forward, fighting. Knox approached the mat and his expression was all business. No smile, no banter. He'd watched the first 3 demonstrations, watched Kira adapt to each opponent's style. He wasn't going to give her time to think. Ma'am, Knox said, I'm going to come forward hard. You need me to pull back, you say so. Don't insult me, petty officer. Knox's eyes narrowed. Yes, ma'am. Commander Hayes raised his hand. Begin. Knox attacked immediately. No circling, no feeling out. He threw a low kick at her lead leg. The shin connected with her thigh-dead leg impact. Kira absorbed it, checked the second kick with her own shin. The collision sounded like baseball bats cracking. Knox threw a straight left. Fast follow-up. Kira slipped it, but took a glancing blow to her shoulder. He was fast. Faster than Caldwell. More aggressive than Sullivan. Knox pressed forward, threw another low kick. Kira checked it, felt the impact reverberate through her bones. He threw a jab. She parried. He threw a cross. She ducked. But she was moving backwards now, defensive, reactive. Exactly what she'd told Sullivan not to be. Knox sensed the shift, pressed harder, threw a body kick targeting her injured ribs. Kira saw it coming, twisted, took it on her arm instead. The pain was white hot. Her arm went partially numb. Knox followed with a straight punch combination. She blocked the first, slipped the second, but the third caught her shoulder again. The 300 SEALs were on their feet now. This was different. This looked like a real fight. Knox was winning the exchanges. Kira was defending, backing up, visibly hurt. In the back of the auditorium, Master Chief Vaughn remained seated. His expression hadn't changed. He simply watched, waited. He knew something the others didn't. He'd trained her. He knew what happened when she stopped defending and started solving. Knox threw another low kick. Kira didn't check it. She moved into it, accepted the impact, used the moment when Knox's weight was on his kicking leg, when he was momentarily off balance to close distance. She was inside his range now, too close for kicks, too close for full power punches. Knox adapted fast, threw a knee, the Muay Thai clinch knee, devastating at close range. Kira turned her hip, took it on her thigh instead of her body. Pain exploded through her leg, but she maintained position. Her left hand shot to the back of his neck. Her right hand controlled his elbow. She had his posture. Knox tried to break the grip, tried to create space, but Kira's technique was perfect. She pulled down on his neck, disrupting his balance, and drove her knee into his thigh. Exactly the same kick he'd been throwing at her, but delivered with precision to the common peroneal nerve bundle. Knox's leg buckled. She didn't let him recover. swept his supporting leg. Knox went down hard. Kira followed, already transitioning to side control. Knox tried to scramble, tried to regain guard, but his leg wasn't responding right. The nerve strike had temporarily paralyzed the muscle. Kira mounted, full mount position. Knox bucked bridged, tried every escape he knew. She rode it out like a professional bronc rider. When he exhausted himself, she postured up and drove a controlled strike toward his face. Pulled it at the last second, stopping an inch from his nose. "Dead," she said quietly. Knox stared up at her, his chest heaving, his legs still not fully functional. Slowly he nodded. Kira stood, extended her hand. Knox took it and she helped him up. His leg gave out. She caught him, supported his weight until feeling returned. "You okay?" she asked. "Nerve strike." "Common peroneal. It'll pass in about 30 seconds. Knox tested his leg. Sensation was returning. Function following. He looked at her with something approaching awe. "You let me hit you. Aggression without patience is suicide. You gave me openings because you were rushing. I waited for one I could use." Knox nodded slowly. "Lesson learned, ma'am." He limped off the mat. The auditorium erupted in conversation. The noise level was different now. Respect. Genuine respect. They'd watched her take punishment and turn it into advantage. They'd watched her adapt to 3 completely different fighting styles and dominate each one. Commander Hayes stepped forward. "Lieutenant, that's enough. You've proven—" "How many more, sir?" Hayes paused, looked at his roster. "2. Then let's finish." "Grade 2 AC separation," the surgeon said, pointing at the shoulder x-ray. "See that gap? That's your acromioclavicular joint. Partially torn ligaments. You're lucky it wasn't a complete separation." He moved to the next image. 2 cracked ribs here and here. Not displaced, which is good. They'll heal on their own with rest. Admiral Merrick stood again, walked to the mat, spoke quietly enough that only Kira Hayes and the corpsman could hear. "Lieutenant, you've made your point. Every man in this room respects what you've done. There's no shame in stopping. Sir, with respect, I didn't come here for respect that comes with conditions. Either I can do this or I can't. If I stop now, they'll always wonder if I could have finished. I need them to know." "Why, because next time it might be one of them who gets hurt, and they need to trust that whoever's teaching them knows what they're teaching. Doubt kills, sir. I'm eliminating doubt." Admiral Merrick studied her face, saw the determination, the pain, the absolute refusal to quit. He'd seen that look before. In submarine commanders who kept their boats operational despite impossible damage. In SEALs who completed missions on broken legs. In warriors who understood that some things mattered more than comfort. "Commander Hayes," the Admiral said, "the next demonstration will include weapons retention. Issue Petty Officer Hartley a training knife. Lieutenant Blackwood remains unarmed." The auditorium went silent. Knife versus unarmed was a completely different scenario. Knives didn't care about sheath or strength. Knives just cut. Even training knives, rubber and blunt, could cause serious injury. This was escalation beyond demonstration. This was testing limits. Hayes opened his mouth to protest, closed it, looked at Kira. She nodded once. "Petty Officer Hartley," Hayes called. "You're up." Lucas Hartley stood from the front section. Call sign Edge, former Force Recon. 6 months of knife fighting training in the Philippines. Kaylee, Iskrima, systems designed around bladed weapons. He was lean, precise, dangerous. If any SEAL in that room could exploit a knife advantage, it was him. Hartley approached the mat, accepted the rubber training knife from Hayes. It was red, marking any contact like paint. Non-lethal, but visible. Proof of where cuts would have landed. Hartley faced Kira. His expression was troubled. "Ma'am, I don't feel right about this." "Why?" "Because you're already hurt, and now I've got a weapon. So don't lose it." Hartley blinked, then smiled slightly. "Yes, ma'am." They squared up. Hartley held the knife in reverse grip, Filipino style, blade down, edge forward. Excellent for close-range slashing and retention. Harder to disarm than forward grip. Commander Hayes raised his hand. 3 engagements. Hartley attacks, Lieutenant defends, and attempts disarm. Begin. Hartley moved carefully. Respected her too much now to rush. He feinted with the knife, testing her reaction. She didn't bite. He feinted again. Still nothing. He committed to a slash across her midsection. Fast. Controlled. Kira moved inside the arc. Her left hand trapped his wrist, controlling the knife hand. Her right hand struck his elbow joint. Not hard enough to injure, just enough to compromise his structure. She twisted, used his own grip strength against Herman. The knife fell. She kicked it away and reset. Hartley retrieved the knife. Nodded. Good control. Again, Commander Hayes said. Second engagement. Hartley came faster. Stabbing motion toward her center mass. Ice pick grip now. Different angle, different defense required. Kira deflected the attacking arm with both hands, redirected the knife past her body, and immediately locked his shoulder. Hartley rotated with it, trying to maintain knife retention. They struggled. His strength advantage showed. She couldn't simply overpower him, so she didn't try. She changed levels, dropped her weight, and used gravity. Hartley went down. As he fell, his grip on the knife loosened. She stripped it, tossed it away. But the fall was awkward. She landed wrong. Her already injured shoulder took the impact. Something separated. Partial dislocation. The pain was immediate and overwhelming. Kira rolled away, clutching her shoulder. Her face went white. The corpsman started toward her, but she waved him off with her good arm. "I'm good," she gasped. "One more." "Ma'am, your shoulder," Hartley started. "One more engagement." That was the protocol. Commander Hayes looked at Admiral Merrick. The Admiral's face was stone. He was letting her make the call, letting her decide her own limits. It was a test within a test. Leadership wasn't just about physical capability. It was about judgment, knowing when to push and when to quit. Kira stood slowly. Her left arm hung useless. Partially dislocated shoulder meant minimal function. She couldn't raise it above chest height, couldn't generate any real power with it. And Hartley still had a knife. "Lieutenant," Admiral Merrick said, "one more engagement, but if Hartley scores a hit, we stop. Clear." "Clear, sir." Hartley picked up the training knife. His expression was pained. He didn't want to do this, didn't want to attack an injured opponent. But orders were orders. Professionalism demanded completion. They faced each other. Kira's breathing was labored. Ribs hurt, shoulder worse, arm bruised, leg still sore from Knox's kicks. She'd taken cumulative damage from 4 opponents and now faced a 5th while visibly compromised. The auditorium was silent. Even the whispered conversations had stopped. 300 men watched, waiting to see if she'd quit, hoping she would, respecting her more if she did. "Begin," Commander Hayes said. His voice was quiet, almost reluctant. Hartley attacked. Not fast, not slow, just professional. Knife forward grip this time. Stabbing motion toward her midsection, aiming away from her injured shoulder, giving her the best chance. Kira's left arm was useless. She had one functional hand, one good arm. Against a trained knife fighter, the geometry was impossible. Unless she changed the geometry. She didn't retreat, didn't try to block. She moved toward the knife, into the danger. It was counterintuitive. Every instinct screamed to move away from the blade. But moving away meant playing defense. Defense meant eventually getting hit. She moved inside Hartley's reach before his stab extended. Her right hand trapped his knife wrist. Not just grabbing, controlling. Her entire body weight committed to that one grip. She turned her back to him, drove her hip into his center mass, and executed a standing shoulder throw. One-armed, pure technique compensating for injury, Hartley went airborne. He was a professional. He held onto the knife. But when he hit the mat, the impact jarred his grip. The knife bounced free. Kira immediately dropped to her knees on his knife arm, pinning it to the mat. Her good hand grabbed the knife. She placed the rubber blade against his throat. "Dead," she said. Hartley stared up at her, at the knife against his throat, at the woman who'd just thrown him one-armed while injured. His expression went through several emotions. Shock, respect, something approaching reverence. "Holy shit," he whispered. Kira released him, tried to stand. Her legs gave out. The accumulated pain, the adrenaline crash, the shoulder injury all hit simultaneously. She went down on one knee. The corpsman was there, instantly supporting her. The auditorium remained silent for 3 heartbeats. Then Chief Petty Officer Garrett Brennan stood. His broken arm was in a cast and sling secured tight to his chest. He was pale from pain medication, but he was standing, and with his good arm, he saluted. The entire auditorium rose as one. 300 Navy SEALs on their feet. And then the applause started. Not polite, not obligatory, thunderous. The sound of 300 warriors acknowledging another warrior. The sound of respect earned in blood, in pain, and absolute refusal to quit. Kira looked up from where she knelt, saw them standing, saw Sledge saluting with his good arm, saw Knox limping but standing, saw Caldwell and Sullivan and Hartley all on their feet, saw 300 faces that had entered this auditorium certain of their superiority and now faced the humbling reality that excellence had no gender requirement. In the back row, Master Chief Dalton Vaughn stood slowly. He didn't salute, didn't applaud. He simply nodded once. The smallest gesture, the highest praise. Then he turned and walked out of the auditorium. His work here was done. Admiral Merrick approached the mat, raised one hand. The applause died slowly, reluctantly. Corpsman, get Lieutenant Blackwood to medical. Now. He turned to face the assembled SEALs. What you just witnessed was not about proving women belong in combat roles. It was about proving that technique, discipline, and controlled aggression matter more than physical advantages. Lieutenant Blackwood just fought 5 of your best and dominated 4 of them while injured. Not because she's stronger, because she's better trained. He paused. Let that sink in. Starting today, this training program changes. Lieutenant Blackwood's methodology will be integrated into all CQC instruction. Voluntold or volunteer every SEAL in this command will train under her program. Because what she just proved is that we've been doing this wrong. Size matters, but skill matters more. Questions. Silence. No questions, just acceptance. Dismissed, Chief Brennan Hold. The crowd filed out, still talking, still processing. Sledge approached the mat, his broken arm obvious in its cast. He looked down at Kira, still being tended by the corpsman. Ma'am, Sledge said, I owe you an apology. Kira looked up at him. For what? For thinking you didn't belong here, for volunteering to humiliate you, for being a jackass. You volunteered to test me. That's not the same thing. And you were right to test me. Every man in this room should have tested me. That's how trust gets built. Sledge was quiet for a moment. Then, permission to speak freely, ma'am. Granted, that was the most impressive shit I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot of impressive shit. Kira smiled despite the pain. Thank you, Chief. Now go get that arm checked. You're no good to anyone if it doesn't heal right. Sledge nodded and walked toward the exit. At the door, he paused and looked back. Ma'am, when you start teaching this program for real, I want to be your first volunteer. You sure I broke your arm? Exactly. I want to learn from someone who can do that. He left. The corpsman finished his examination. Separated shoulder grade 2. 2 cracked ribs. Severe bruising to left arm and both legs. Recommendation? Hospital x-rays, 6 weeks light duty minimum. Kira shook her head. I need 2 days, then I'm back. Ma'am, 2 days. Admiral Merrick approached. Lieutenant, the corpsman's recommendation stands. You're on medical leave for 6 weeks. That's an order. Sir, not negotiable. You just proved your point to 300 skeptics. Now prove you have the judgment to recover properly before returning to duty. Dismissed. Kira wanted to argue, but orders were orders. She nodded. Yes, sir. The corpsman helped her stand, supported her weight as they walked toward the exit. At the door, she looked back at the mat, at the auditorium, at the place where she'd just changed 300 minds about what was possible. Her father's Ranger tab still hung on the chair at Matt's side. She'd almost forgotten it. The corpsman saw where she was looking and retrieved it, handed it to her. She clutched it in her good hand. Your father was at Mogadishu, the corpsman asked as they walked. Yeah. My uncle, too. Task Force Ranger. He made it home. I'm sorry yours didn't. Kira was quiet for a moment. He died doing what mattered. That's all any of us can ask for. They exited into bright California sunlight. The heat hit like a physical force after the air-conditioned auditorium. Kira squinted, let her eyes adjust. The corpsman guided her toward the medical facility across the complex. Behind them inside the auditorium, Commander Hayes stood alone on the mat. He looked at the space where Kira had fought 5 men and refused to quit. Looked at the bloodstains on the mat where she'd been thrown, where she'd fallen, where she'd bled. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. This is Hayes. I need to speak with Bud's command. Yeah, it's about curriculum changes. Major ones. We need to talk about integrating new methodology into Phase 2 training. He listened for a moment. Because I just watched a 120-pound woman dominate 5 of my best SEALs while injured. And if she can do it, we should all be able to do it. The question isn't whether it works. The question is why we haven't been teaching it all along. He hung up, looked at the mat one more time, then turned off the lights and locked the auditorium behind him. The demonstration was over. The real work was about to begin. The medical facility at Coronado smelled like antiseptic and strong coffee. Kira sat on an examination table while a Navy surgeon studied her x-rays against the light board. Her left arm was immobilized in a sling. Her ribs were wrapped so tight she could barely take a full breath. Every movement hurt. Every thought about movement hurt worse. Grade 2 ache separation, the surgeon said, pointing at the shoulder x-ray. See that gap? That's your acromioclavicular joint, partially torn ligaments. You're lucky it wasn't a complete separation. He moved to the next image. 2 cracked ribs here and here. Not displaced, which is good. They'll heal on their own with rest. How long? 6 to 8 weeks for the shoulder, 4 to 6 for the ribs. You'll need physical therapy, anti-inflammatories, and actual rest, Lieutenant. Not Navy rest where you're back at your desk in 72 hours. Real rest. Kira nodded. She'd heard similar speeches before. Injuries were part of the job. You took them, you healed them, you moved on. The surgeon left to file his report. The corpsman who'd helped her from the auditorium brought her a bottle of water and 2 pills. Ibuprofen, he said. Doc says you refuse the strong stuff. Need to stay clear. Paperwork doesn't write itself. The corpsman smiled. Ma'am, with respect, I don't think you're going to be doing much paperwork for a while. What you did out there, that's going to change things. Big things. You just rewrote the book. Kira took the pills and drank half the bottle. The water was cold and perfect. Simple pleasures after complex pain. I just demonstrated technique. That's all. That's all, ma'am. You broke Chief Brennan's arms, submitted 4 more SEALs, and disarmed a knife fighter while injured. That's not just technique. That's legend material. Before Kira could respond, the door opened. Master Chief Dalton Vaughn entered, moving with the careful precision of a man whose joints had logged too many miles. He wore khakis now instead of his dress uniform. His face was weathered, granite eyes sharp despite his 67 years. He looked at the corpsman. Give us the room, son. Yes, Master Chief. The corpsman left quickly. Vaughn pulled a chair over and sat. For a long moment, he just looked at her, assessing, the way he'd looked at her 1,000 times over 23 years. When she was 9 and couldn't reach the heavy bag properly. When she was 15 and wanted to quit after taking a beating in sparring. When she was 22 and graduated Bodiadis with stress fractures in both legs. Your father would be proud, Vaughn finally said. Not because you won, because you didn't quit when you should have. I couldn't quit. Too many people watching. Bullshit. You could have quit after Brennan. Could have quit after Caldwell when you cracked those ribs. Could have definitely quit after Knox beat the hell out of you. You didn't quit because quitting isn't in your wiring. Wade was the same way, stubborn as a Missouri mule. Kira smiled despite the pain. You always said stubbornness was just persistence with bad PR. Did I say that sounds too clever for me? Vaughn reached into his pocket and pulled out a small book. Old, worn. The cover was faded green canvas, water-stained and frayed. This was my training manual from Gulf War. Handwritten notes in the margins. Techniques I learned from force recon guys, from SAS operators, from anyone who'd teach me. Your father studied this book when I trained him back in '86. Now I'm giving it to you. He held it out. Kira took it with her good hand. The weight was negligible, but the significance was enormous. This book represented decades of accumulated knowledge, combat experience distilled into notes and diagrams, and lessons learned in blood. Master Chief, I can't. You can and you will, but here's the condition. When you find someone worthy, man or woman, you pass it to them. Knowledge doesn't belong to individuals. It belongs to the profession. You're the keeper for now. Someday you'll hand it off. That's how legacy works. Kira opened the book carefully. The first page had an inscription in faded ink. Dalton Vaughan, Panama, 1989. Stay low, move fast, trust your training. She turned pages slowly, saw diagrams of joint locks, notes about timing and leverage. A sketch of a triangle choke with angular measurements. This was history. This was family. Thank you, she said quietly. Vaughn stood. Don't thank me. Earn it. Teach what I taught you. Make them better than we were. That's the job now. He moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. That admiral of yours, Merrick, he's got plans for you, big plans. Don't let the politics turn you into something you're not. You're a warrior. Stay a warrior. Then he was gone. The door closed with a soft click. Kira sat alone in the medical room holding a Gulf War training manual and trying not to cry from pain and gratitude, and the weight of expectations she wasn't sure she could carry. She sat there for 20 minutes, long enough for the ibuprofen to dull the sharpest edges, long enough to convince herself she could stand without falling. She gathered her things, signed herself out against medical advice, and walked back toward her quarters. Every step hurt. Her shoulder throbbed. Her ribs screamed, but she walked. 2 days later, Admiral Merrick's office. Kira stood at attention in fresh khakis, her arm still in a sling. The Admiral sat behind his desk reviewing a thick folder. His office was Spartan, just a desk, some chairs and walls covered with photos from his submarine days. Silent service. Men who'd spent months underwater making decisions that could end the world or save it. At ease, Lieutenant. Merrick gestured to a chair. Sit before you fall over. Kira sat carefully. Her ribs protested. She kept her face neutral. I've reviewed the medical report, Merrick said. Also reviewed the after-action statements from all 5 SEALs you demonstrated against, plus the statements from approximately 200 others who witnessed the event. The consensus is universal. What you did was exceptional. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet. I'm about to make your life substantially more complicated. Merrick closed the folder and looked at her directly. Effective immediately, you're appointed Chief Close Quarters Combat Instructor for Naval Special Warfare Command. You'll oversee curriculum development, instructor training, and implementation across all teams. You'll have a staff, a budget, and more scrutiny than you can possibly imagine. Kira processed that. Chief Instructor. It was what she'd been working toward. What every demonstration, every test, every broken bone had been building toward. But hearing it made real created a weight in her chest that had nothing to do with cracked ribs. Sir, there are officers with more experience, more seniority, men who've been doing this for decades. You're right, and every one of them has been teaching the same methodology that prioritizes size and strength over technique. You just proved there's a better way. The question is whether you're ready to teach it at scale. Are you, Kira thought about her father, about Master Chief Vaughn, about 300 SEALs standing in respect, about a training manual with decades of knowledge written in the margins, about legacy and responsibility and the weight of changing an institution. Yes, sir, I'm ready. Good. You start in 6 weeks, after your shoulder heals. Use that time to develop your curriculum. I want lesson plans, training schedules, assessment metrics. I want a complete program that can be replicated across the entire command. Questions. 1, sir, what about the pushback? There will be officers who don't accept this, men who think this is political, men who will resist. Merrick smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. Let them resist. You just dominated 5 of their best while injured. Anyone who wants to challenge the methodology can step on the mat with you. I suspect there won't be many volunteers after word spreads about what happened in that auditorium. He stood. Kira stood with him. Dismissed, Lieutenant, and congratulations. You've earned this. Kira saluted and left. The hallway outside was quiet. She walked slowly, favoring her ribs, and tried to process what had just happened. Chief Instructor. It was real. It was happening. And in 6 weeks, she'd have to prove she could teach 300 skeptics the same lessons Master Chief Vaughn had spent 23 years teaching her. The weight was enormous. The opportunity was everything. 4 days after the appointment, Kira was in her quarters reviewing curriculum notes when someone knocked. She opened the door to find Chief Petty Officer Garrett Brennan standing there. His broken arm was still in a cast secured in a complex sling system. He looked uncomfortable. Not from pain, from whatever he'd come here to say. Chief Brennan, Kira said. You need something. Ma'am, I need to talk to you. If you have a minute. Kira stepped aside. Sledge entered carefully, taking up too much space in the small quarters. He looked around like he'd never seen officer housing before. Probably hadn't. Different worlds, different ranks. How's the arm? Kira asked. Healing. Doc says 6 more weeks in the cast than physical therapy. Should be full function in 4 months. Sledge hesitated. That's not why I'm here. Why are you here? Sledge took a breath, let it out slowly. I need to apologize. Properly. Not the quick version I gave you in the auditorium. A real apology. Chief, you already? Ma'am, please, let me get this out. Sledge looked at his boots. When I volunteered that day, it wasn't to learn. It was to prove you didn't belong. To embarrass you in front of everyone so this whole thing would go away and we could go back to the way things were. I was wrong, not just tactically. Morally, I judged you before you ever stepped on that mat. I decided you couldn't be good enough because of what you look like. That's not the man I want to be. Kira was quiet for a moment. What changed your mind? You broke my arm. That's it. No, you broke my arm and then controlled it so it would heal right. You could have shattered it, could have ended my career, but you didn't. You used exactly enough force to prove your point and no more. That's discipline. That's control. That's what being a professional looks like. Sledge finally looked up at her. I need to tell you something else, something personal. Okay. My uncle was at Mogadishu, October 93, Captain Patrick Brennan, Task Force Ranger. He was with the convoy that went in to rescue the downed helicopter crews. Sledge's voice got quieter. He didn't make it out. Killed in the fighting around the Olympic Hotel. I was 9 years old when they brought him home. Grew up hearing stories about that battle, about the Rangers and Delta guys who fought there. Kira felt something click in her chest, a connection she hadn't expected. My father was there too, Colonel Wade Blackwood. He died in the same operation. Sledge nodded slowly. I know, I looked it up after the demonstration, after Master Chief Vaughn mentioned training your father. I did the math. Mogadishu 93. You would have been 6. Same age my cousin was when her father didn't come home. They stood there in silence. 2 people connected by a battle fought 32 years ago. By fathers and uncles who died in a city most Americans couldn't find on a map. By legacy and sacrifice, in the weight of living up to dead men's standards. Their sacrifice gave us this opportunity, Kira said quietly. Not to be perfect, but to be better than we were. To honor them by refusing to settle. Is that why you do this push so hard, risk so much? Partly, but mostly I do it because if I don't, then what was the point? My father gave everything. Master Chief Vaughn spent 23 years teaching me. I owe them both results. I owe them excellence. Sledge nodded. Ma'am, when you start your training program, I want to be your first volunteer. Not because I feel guilty, because I want to learn what you know. I want to be better than I was. Your arm needs to heal first. I've got another arm and legs and 6 weeks to study whatever curriculum you're developing. I'm serious about this, ma'am. I want in. Kira studied him, saw genuine commitment, genuine transformation. The man standing in her quarters wasn't the same man who'd volunteered to humiliate her. That man had been broken along with his arm. This man was rebuilt, stronger in the places that mattered. Okay, Kira said, you're in, but I'm going to work you harder than anyone else. You know why? Because I deserve it. Because you volunteered first. Because you had the courage to admit you were wrong. Because I need someone who can teach this to others when I'm not there. You're going to be my demonstration partner, my assistant instructor, my proof that this works for everyone. That's a lot of responsibility. Sledge straightened. I can handle it, ma'am. We'll see. Report to me in 6 weeks, 0600. Bring your pride in a box because you're going to eat a lot of it. Yes, ma'am. Sledge moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. The guys are talking. Word spread about your appointment. Most of them are supportive. But there's a group, maybe 20 or 30, who think this is political. Who think the Admiral is pushing an agenda. They're planning to resist, to make your program fail. Names. I can get you a list. Don't bother. When the program starts, they'll identify themselves. And when they do, I'll demonstrate on them personally until they either learn or transfer out. This isn't about politics. It's about capability. Anyone who can't see that doesn't belong in the teams. Sledge grinned. Yes, ma'am, I almost feel sorry for them. Don't. They're professionals. They'll adapt or they'll leave. Either way, the program moves forward. Sledge left. Kira returned to her curriculum notes but couldn't focus. She kept thinking about Mogadishu, about fathers and uncles who died in the same fight, about connections formed through shared tragedy, about the strange way sacrifice echoed through generations. She pulled out her father's Ranger tab, held it in her good hand. The fabric was worn, the edges frayed. It had been through Mogadishu, through 23 years of training, through a demonstration that had changed 300 minds. It was just cloth and thread. But it was also everything. 6 weeks passed like 6 days. Physical therapy every morning. Curriculum development every afternoon. Lesson plans and training schedules and assessment metrics. Kira worked through the pain, pushed through the limitations, and built a program from the ground up. Master Chief Vaughn's training manual sat open on her desk, guiding every decision. She copied techniques, adapted methodologies, integrated lessons learned across 4 decades of combat experience. By week 4, her shoulder function was returning. By week 5, she could demonstrate basic techniques without screaming pain. By week 6, she was operational. Not perfect, not fully healed, but functional. The morning she returned to duty, 47 SEALs were awaiting in the training facility. Not just Sledge, not just the 5 she'd demonstrated against. 47 volunteers who'd heard about the program and wanted in. They stood in loose formation waiting when she entered at 0600. Kira walked to the front of the group, looked at them, recognized faces from the auditorium, saw Sledge in the front row. His cast finally removed his arms, still weak but functional. Saw Knox standing beside him, saw Caldwell and Sullivan and Hartley, saw men who'd been skeptics and were now students. Good morning, Kira said. Her voice carried across the facility. You're here because you want to learn a different approach to close quarters combat, an approach that prioritizes technique over strength, leverage over mass patience, over aggression. I'm not going to lie to you. This training will be hard. It will be frustrating. It will force you to unlearn things you think you know. Some of you will hate it. Some of you will quit. That's fine. This program isn't for everyone. It's for people who want to be excellent regardless of their strength or their natural advantages. She paused, scanned the group. Before we begin, I want to tell you something about my father. Colonel Wade Blackwood died at Mogadishu in October '93. He was killed trying to rescue downed helicopter crews. He died doing what Rangers do, what warriors do, putting the mission above themselves, putting their teammates above their own survival. Her voice stayed steady, professional. My father's sacrifice meant something because people learned from it, because the military got better, smarter, more capable. That's what we're doing here. We're getting better. We're learning from everyone who came before us. And someday people will learn from us. That's how legacy works. That's how we honor the people who gave everything. She held up Master Chief Vaughn's training manual. This book contains techniques learned over 4 decades of combat. My mentor gave it to me with instructions to pass it forward when I found someone worthy. All of you are worthy. You proved that by showing up. Now let's get to work. The training began, 6 hours a day, 5 days a week. Basic techniques first. Falling properly. Rolling correctly. Understanding angles and leverage in center of gravity. The fundamentals that most SEALs thought they knew but had never truly mastered. Kira demonstrated everything first. Showed them how a properly executed deflection could redirect 500 pounds of force with minimal effort. How a correctly applied joint lock could immobilize someone twice their size. How patience and timing mattered more than speed and power. Sledge was her primary demonstration partner. He'd regained most of his arm function and threw himself into the training with convert zeal. When Kira needed someone to show a technique on, Sledge volunteered. When students struggled with concepts, Sledge helped explain from his perspective. He'd gone from antagonist to advocate, and his transformation convinced others that this wasn't politics. It was improvement. By week 3 of the program, every SEAL in the facility could execute basic deflections and controls. By week 6, they were chaining techniques together. By week 12, they were sparring using the new methodology and seeing results. Admiral Merrick visited on week 12, watched the training from the observation deck, saw 47 SEALs working through complex scenarios with precision and control, saw Kira instructing, correcting, demonstrating, saw Sledge assisting translating her techniques into language the men understood, saw an institutional transformation happening in real time. After the session, Admiral Merrick called Kira to his office. "I've been watching the progress reports," he said. "Injury rates are down 38% across the teams training under your methodology. Combat efficiency scores are up 52%. Whatever you're doing, it's working." "It's not me, sir. It's the techniques. I'm just teaching what Master Chief Vaughn taught me, what my father learned, what's been proven over decades of combat." "Don't be modest, Lieutenant. You're the one who synthesized it into a teachable program. You're the one who convinced 47 skeptics to trust a different approach. That's leadership." Merrick pulled out a folder. "I'm recommending your program be adopted across all Naval Special Warfare Command. Every SEAL, every SWCC, every support element. This becomes standard doctrine. Congratulations." Kira felt the weight of it. Standard doctrine. That meant thousands of operators learning her curriculum. That meant responsibility on a scale she'd never imagined. That meant her father's legacy and Master Chief Vaughn's knowledge would reach people she'd never meet. It was overwhelming and perfect and terrifying. "Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me. Thank yourself. You earned this. Now comes the hard part. Scaling it up, training instructors, maintaining quality as it expands. That's years of work, Lieutenant. You ready for that?" "Yes, sir." 6 months after the auditorium demonstration, Kira stood in the same training facility conducting a morning class. 47 students had become 60. Word had spread. Volunteers kept coming. Men who'd been skeptical had become believers. Men who'd been believers had become evangelists. Sledge was demonstrating an armbar variation when the door opened and a young woman entered. Ensign Harper Thorne, 23 years old, fresh from officer candidate school, nervous, determined. She stood at attention just inside the door the same way Kira had stood 6 months ago in that auditorium full of skeptics. Kira called a break and approached. "Ensign Thorne, you need something?" "Ma'am, I was told to report here. They said you are the chief CQC instructor." "That's right. First day." "Yes, ma'am. I've heard the stories about the demonstration, about the program. I requested assignment here specifically." Kira studied her, saw nervousness, saw determination underneath, saw a younger version of herself standing in spaces where she wasn't sure she belonged, trying to prove she deserved to be there. "Have you trained before, Ensign?" "Some, ma'am. High school wrestling, some judo in college. Nothing formal." "Then you're starting from scratch." "That's good. Easier to build correct fundamentals than to fix bad ones." Kira gestured to the mat. "Join the formation. We're working joint controls today. Pay attention to questions and don't be afraid to tap out. Pride heals slower than injuries." Harper moved to join the group. Kira watched her go, watched the male SEALs make space for her without comment, watched Sledge nod a greeting, watched a young woman take her place among warriors who 6 months ago would have laughed her out of the facility. Things had changed. Things were still changing. After class, Kira returned to her office. The space was small but functional. Desk, filing cabinet, equipment storage. On the wall, mounted in a simple frame, hung her father's Ranger tab. Next to it, Master Chief Vaughn's training manual under glass. Legacy preserved, knowledge protected. She sat at her desk and opened her laptop. Email from Admiral Merrick. Subject line: Congressional briefing. He wanted her to present the program results to a House Armed Services subcommittee, to show them what modern CQC training looked like, to prove that institutional change produced measurable results. Politics. She hated politics, but Master Chief Vaughn's words echoed in her mind. "Don't let the politics turn you into something you are not. You're a warrior. Stay a warrior." She'd present the results, show them the data, let the numbers speak. But she wouldn't become a political tool, wouldn't let this program be used for anything except making operators more capable. That was the line. That was the standard. Her phone buzzed. Text from Sledge. "Ma'am, group of us heading to the Salty Frog for dinner. You should join, Bring stories about the old days when you used to beat us up. She smiled. Type back, I'm still beating you up. That's called training. His response was immediate. Fair point. Dinner anyway? She considered. Thought about boundaries between officers and enlisted. Thought about maintaining professional distance. Then thought about Sledge's broken arm, about Knox's nerve strike, about 5 demonstrations that had built trust through shared pain. Thought about her father and his uncle dying in the same fight 3 decades ago. Some boundaries mattered. Some were just walls. She typed 2000. I'll buy the first round. That evening, Kira walked into the Salty Frog and found 12 SEALs from her program occupying a corner booth. They stood when she entered. Old habits. She waved them down. At ease, gentlemen. This is off duty. First person who calls me ma'am buys next round. They relaxed. She joined them, ordered a beer, listened to their stories about training mishaps and deployment memories, and the strange brotherhood that formed among people who trusted each other with their lives. She didn't talk much, just listened. Just existed in this space between instructor and friend officer and operator woman and warrior. Sledge raised his beer. To Lieutenant Blackwood, who broke my arm and changed my mind about everything. To the lieutenant, they echoed. She raised her glass. To all of you, for being willing to learn, for checking your egos at the door, for proving that excellence is the only thing that matters. They drank. The evening continued. And somewhere in the laughter and the stories, in the simple act of sharing a meal with people who understood, Kira felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not just respect, not just accomplishment, but belonging. The sense that she'd found her place among people who saw her for what she was not, what she looked like. Later, walking back to her quarters under the California stars, Kira touched the Ranger tab hanging beneath her shirt. Thought about her father. Thought about Master Chief Vaughn. Thought about 47 SEALs who'd learned to trust technique over strength. Thought about a young ensign taking her first steps into a world that would test her and forge her and maybe eventually make her into something extraordinary. Legacy wasn't something you inherited. It was something you earned. Every single day, in every decision, in every moment when quitting would be easier than continuing. Her father had earned his legacy in Mogadishu. Master Chief Vaughn had earned his over 4 decades of service. Now it was her turn, her opportunity, her responsibility. She reached her quarters and paused at the door, looked back across the base, saw lights in the training facility where tomorrow she'd teach 60 students, saw lights in the medical facility where tomorrow someone else would get injured and healed, saw lights in the headquarters building where tomorrow Admiral Merrick would push the program further wider, deeper into naval special warfare culture, saw change happening, saw excellence being recognized, saw the future being built. One technique, one student, one converted skeptic at a time. She went inside. Tomorrow would come early, would bring new challenges, new students, new opportunities to prove that what she'd done in that auditorium 6 months ago wasn't a fluke or luck or anything except the natural result of superior training applied with absolute commitment. Tomorrow she'd teach. Tomorrow she'd lead. Tomorrow she'd continue building a legacy that honored everyone who'd come before and prepared everyone who'd come after. But tonight she'd sleep. She set her father's Ranger tab on the nightstand beside Vaughn's training manual. 2 pieces of fabric and paper. 2 legacies entrusted to her care. Outside, Coronado was quiet except for the distant sound of surf against the shore. The same sound her father had heard when he trained here decades ago. The same sound that would greet Harper Thorne in the generations after her. Kira closed her eyes, the sleep of a warrior who'd proven herself, who'd earned her place, who'd changed 300 minds with 5 demonstrations and absolute refusal to quit. The sleep of someone who knew the work was just beginning and was ready for it.